Hello fellow collectors, I hope you are doing wonderfully well. Today I have another pickups video for you, and I thought I'd take you through the films I've been picking up over the last sort of 2.5 months. We've been so lucky recently as there seems to be a new sale on almost every week at the moment, and so I've done my best not to overindulge in any one label in particular, despite the enormous pile of stuff that you see before you. I've got about 45 titles to take you through today, and I've seen just over half of these already, so it might be a bit of a longer video, but as usual, many of these were blind buys for me. So grab yourself a cup of tea, get comfortable, and let's get right into it. First up, we have a few titles from 101 Films, and we'll start with this one here, The Deep. I'd been really keen to see this one for quite a while, so I put it on more or less straight away after I bought it. And I liked it. Definitely an enjoyable film, but certainly more on the average side, shall we say. I think this one was just a real missed opportunity, as I think it could have been incredible. The ingredients were all there, with an adventure that mixes elements of Indiana Jones with the great underwater action of something like James Bond. We have sunken treasure, drug smugglers, all in a beautiful Caribbean setting with some great actors involved like Robert Shaw. I have a feeling it might have been the editing in the end that let this one down, as there are so many moments where conversations are happening and it feels like we missed them discussing things in more detail earlier in the film, so sadly this one didn't quite live up to my expectations. I do actually think that this could be a great candidate for a remake, because the core of the story is pretty fantastic. Then we have Open Range, a film I've not seen for many years. I'm pretty sure my family rented this one back when it came out, or perhaps we just saw it on TV, but actually we still quote a line from it to this day, which is, "We're a mite rank, ma'am," which I remember seemed to cause raucous laughter at the time, and still does really. So I'm very much looking forward to revisiting this one, as I do remember it being a great western, both starring and directed by Kevin Costner. And lastly from 101 we have The Three Burials of Melquiades Estrada, which I'm sure I've butchered, even though I've seen this one already and I've heard the name about 1,000 times, so I really should be getting it right. I hadn't heard of this one before, but it dropped massively in price, so I decided to take a chance on it and get it. This one has Tommy Lee Jones, who is an actor that I often really enjoy, and he not only stars in this one but also directs, and this was actually his directorial debut. This is a film that is also sadly based on some true events. Again here, I liked this one, and it felt like it had a really strong start and a strong premise, but to be honest, it waned quite a bit in the middle and towards the end, and kind of left me feeling like it was quite average. Where again, I thought this one had the potential to be really pretty great. I don't want to spoil it for anyone that might want to see it, but I just felt like it was quite unbalanced. Sometimes justice or vengeance perhaps in films can not feel quite right. Either it can be too easy, like a let-off, or it can be too overdone, where it feels more extreme than the crime. And that sort of imbalance was, really quite evident in this one, which just didn't sit super well with me. But it was a pretty good watch, and definitely one that I might watch again. Next up, and we have just one from Studio Canal's Vintage Classics line, and it's The Criminal. I watched The Guns of Navarone a few months ago at the end of February, and it gave me a real interest to check out more films with Stanley Baker, who is our main character in this one. To be honest, he's not even got a huge role in that other film, but it just seemed like a really interesting actor, and he has kind of an air of Sean Connery about him, I thought. Not sure if anyone else might agree with that. And so I've been delving into more of his filmography in the last sort of 4 months, and I'm hoping to make a video on him and his films in the coming months. But unfortunately, quite a lot of his that I've seen, while I've been absolutely fine, haven't really blown me away. There haven't been ones that I've loved and that I'd like to talk about more. Except perhaps Perfect Friday, which has been my favourite of his so far, and that was a film that I heard about from Roy over at Bluray Movies. Hopefully I'll watch some others that I really enjoy so I can make a video talking about him in some more depth. The Criminal I again thought was fine. It was nothing special though. It's a prison drama, combined with that classic tale of just one last job. It's got a solid cast and story, but it just didn't really grab me like I was hoping it would, and To be honest, I didn't really care all that much for the characters. And so when consequences happened, I just wasn't all that bothered, and that's always a bit of a red flag for me in a film, as it hasn't managed to get me quite invested enough. Moving on, and we have a couple titles from Shout Factory, which is a label that I've only very recently started buying from, as I have to import them from the States. The first one here is California, which is a film which stars Agent Mulder from The X-Files, Ensign Rowe from Star Trek, a rare bearded Brad Pitt, and a young Juliette Lewis, so what is not to like here? I've been recently re-watching The X-Files, which is of course superb, and I was just looking through what films David Duchovny had done. And this one just happened to pique my interest, so I went for it. I've not seen this one yet, but I know the reception has been, or was, somewhat mixed, so I'm tempering my expectations, but yeah, definitely looking forward to checking this one out. And then we have David Lynch's Wild at Heart. I've been wanting to go on a bit of a journey through Laura Dern's films recently. I watched Smooth Talk not too long ago, and I want to revisit Blue Velvet, but as I'm also on a journey to own all of David Lynch's films, this one seemed like a solid choice. We've got Laura Dern and Nicolas Cage together, which I'm sure will be a potent combination. Add to that Willem Dafoe, and then all directed by the legendary David Lynch, and I am pretty excited to see what this has in store. Then we have a Warner Archive title, which is The Old Man and the Sea. I'd vaguely heard of this one before, but maybe just because it's based on an Ernest Hemingway story. But I saw Roy, again from Bluray Movies, talking about it a while back, and I think he picked it up from a local charity shop, and it just piqued my interest, so I imported this Warner Archive edition. It's directed by John Sturges and starring, of course, Spencer Tracy, and this one has a lot going for it. But again, it was quite an average film, I thought. Despite its runtime of under 90 minutes, it just felt a little bit too empty for me. It's got an intriguing premise, which is about an old fisherman who is past it, and who everyone thinks is past it, and he can't really fish very well anymore. But he goes out one day and ends up in a battle trying to capture this huge fish. And it's a bit of a meditation in some ways, it's an existential piece, but one that just lacked a little bit for me. I think my thoughts are on a similar line to Roy's, where it's definitely worth a watch, but it's nothing too special. And in actual fact, if you'd like to watch this sort of thing done exceptionally well, then I can highly recommend All Is Lost with Robert Redford. And next we have a Eureka release, one that I've had my eye on for a good long while now, and it's A Foreign Affair. I'm quite keen actually to pick up every Billy Wilder film that the Masters of Cinema have put out, and this of course gets me one step closer. I was lucky enough to be in Germany at the end of last year and in Berlin, and I visited their wonderful film museum, which, as you might expect, had a big section on Marlene Dietrich, who of course stars in this film. And it had some props from this one and a huge poster, so that definitely piqued my interest to check this one out, so delighted to finally have it. And then we have The Innocent, which is a Janus Contemporaries release. I actually talked about this film a bit more in my Best Films I Watched in September video from last year. I was lucky enough to go to the cinema to see this one, and I really enjoyed it. It's a bit of a mixture of a romance, a heist film, a family drama, and it has plenty of comedy in it as well, which all keeps it quite light despite having some sort of darker themes. This one stars Louis Garrel and Noémie Merlan, both who are absolutely fantastic, and it's one that I really look forward to revisiting. I can definitely recommend this one. Moving on, and we have a bunch of XMen steelbooks. If I can sort of prop these up here. Now, I do try my best to avoid double dipping on releases as much as I can, especially for ones that are not among my absolute favourites. But Zavvi recently did a crazy deal on these four where you could get them for just £25. In other words, I paid £6.25 each for these, which was just a fantastic deal, so I couldn't turn it down. Now, I'm not so much a fan of these lenticulars, but if I take this one off here, you can see that actually underneath there is a lovely border and some embossing here too, and it's the same for all of these four steelbooks here, which I really, really like. And as I'm not too much a fan of the two 4K box sets that I have for these films, I thought I could just swap the discs over and sort of have these nicer editions as the main ones that I own. Over the last year or so, every now and again, I have also been looking to pick up the original trilogy steelbooks, particularly these two here. And you'll see X2 and this one, which is still sealed. Both have the lovely border and embossing as well. I'm not sure if I can get this one to stand up on its own. But shortly after buying those four, I just decided to take to eBay and finally pick these both up. They weren't quite as cheap as £6.25, but to be honest, these were both also incredibly reasonably priced considering how long out of print they are. It was actually back in 2020 that I revisited all these films, and some maybe for the first time, because I don't think I'd ever actually seen The Last Stand all the way through. And I just had an absolute blast watching this series. I did not remember it being as good as it was. And I'm really quite keen to revisit these films again at some point this year, so it's great to have them in such lovely editions, and that by no means broke the bank. Next up, I have 8 releases here, all from the Vinegar Syndrome partner labels and from their sale that they ran. Now, Vinegar Syndrome isn't really a label that that puts out films that I'm really interested in, but they are actually doing great stuff promoting and helping these other smaller labels release films. And I'm delighted to say that my first purchases from them were smooth, easy, and the shipping was a lot quicker than I was hoping for as well. Really some great stuff from that company. First are a couple releases from Deaf Crocodile, which is a label that I'll keep hearing nothing but good things about. And I decided to go for this one here, Kin Dazar Dazar, which hopefully hopefully I'm close to being correct on that. And this one is described as if Andrei Tarkovsky directed Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And my goodness, if that doesn't pique your interest, I'm not sure what will. So we have a Soviet film here that is a comedy, no less. Definitely can't wait to check this one out and see what it has in store for me. And then we have The Son of the Stars. And it seems like Deaf Crocodile are in some ways making their name by releasing some underseen and unknown animated features. So really also keen to check out this Romanian animated space adventure, which is described as a mashup of The Empire Strikes Back, Alien and Tarzan. Pretty intriguing stuff. Next we have Skateboard from Factory 25, and this one just had a great 70s aesthetic to it. That reminded me a little bit of something like the surfing documentary The Endless Summer, though that one was of course from the mid-60s, so perhaps something more like Dazed and Confused. It's about a Hollywood agent that gets in debt to a bookie, and then he forms a skateboard team to enter into a race. It looked fairly low budget, but also kind of like something I might really love. I did used to skateboard when I was a teenager, and yeah, I still enjoy watching things to do with it even now. Then we have What Doesn't Float from Circle Collective. And this one stars the less famous Chalamet sibling, which is Timothy's sister, Pauline Chalamet, who is on the front cover here. This was quite an interesting watch, and not really like anything I've seen before, as it's not a narrative film. It's like a load of shorts all presented together. They are completely disparate stories. They don't really intertwine at all, except for the fact that they take place in New York. That's what links them all. A curious experience, but I did enjoy it. Then we have Fulltime, which is from Music Box Films. I've seen reviews describe this one as like a single mum's version of Run Lola Run, or perhaps Uncut Gems. It's a French film about a woman who has an interview for a job, which could mean she could raise her children better. But she gets caught up in a national transit strike. Definitely an intriguing premise. Looking forward to this one. And then we have In Between Girl, which is from Utopia. I really quite enjoyed this film. It's a coming-of-age tale, and while it doesn't really do anything new or break much new ground, it's still a really solid story about growing up, and yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I gave this one an honourable mention in my last month's Best of the Month video. And yeah, features a great performance from our main character here, played by Emma Galbraith. And lastly, we have two from Carney. The first one is Tremble All You Want. And one of the best films I saw this year, a bit earlier on, was Shoplifters by Hirokazu Koreeda. It was an absolutely incredible experience, and so I started looking into the filmographies of some of the actors. And when looking at Mayu Matsuoka, who is our main character here, I came across this film. It's the story of a girl who has never gotten over a high school crush, and it's all about the sort of huge impact that that's had on her life. I was hoping to love this one, but to be honest, it was another fairly average watch. Definitely had some interesting moments, but overall just didn't quite capture me as much as I was hoping. And lastly, we have Journey to the West with this absolutely wonderful and wild slipcover. To be honest, I just thought this one looked right up my street. It's a sci-fi from 2021 about a magazine editor that tries to find signs of an alien civilization. It just looks pretty weird and wacky, and yeah, I have a feeling I'm going to love this one. Next up, we have a couple HMV premiums, and the first one here is The Shop Around the Corner. Not a film that I'm overly familiar with, to be honest, but one that I've seen on a couple of Solitary Ronin's top 25 lists, and hearing him talk so highly about this one definitely piqued my interest. And of course, like most of us, I'm a big James Stewart fan, so definitely high hopes for this one. And then we have Chinatown, with this middle bit looking very precarious. This was a film that I originally struggled to get through the first few times I tried to watch it, actually, until one day I finally sat down and saw the whole thing, and of course there's no denying this is a great film. Of course there has been that recent 4K release of this film, but to be honest I just thought £40 was too much for it, and I quite prefer this original artwork on the front cover anyway. And so, really glad to have this one that I look forward to revisiting at some point in the future. And for just £7.50, as these two were both in a 2 for £15 sale, definitely can't complain. And then I'll just, before I move this one out, stop this whole thing from falling over. Lovely. Then we have this one here, The Integrity of Joseph Chambers, which was very kindly gifted to me by Roy from Bluray Movies. So thanks so much, Roy. Really, really appreciate it. I really enjoyed the director, Robert Macholian's other film, which was called The Killing of Two Lovers, which was a really moving tale with some pretty tough moments, and also starred Clayne Crawford, who is our main character here as well. So really keen to see what this one is like, and yeah, a huge thank you to Roy for sending this over. Moving on, and we have this long out of print, lovely steelbook of the incredible A History of Violence. Of course, directed by David Cronenberg, one of my absolute favourites from him, and starring the excellent Viggo Mortensen. I've been wanting to revisit this one for a while now, and every now and again I search on eBay to see how much the steelbook is going for, and it's usually just absolutely silly money. But a few weeks ago, me and my mum went to the London Comic Con, which we do every year now, and it's always a huge amount of fun. And actually something I've noticed each year is that there seems to be more and more physical media that people are selling there. And for the first time, I came across a stall selling some premium releases and some out-of-print stuff, including this one here, which was still sealed, so I snapped it up. Sadly, I was absolutely gutted because when I opened up, the back is pretty scratched up, but of course no fault of the sellers or mine because there was no way to tell with it being sealed, but definitely pretty disappointing because it was a pricey purchase. Unfortunately, I'm struggling to get it out of this protective case to show you because it's actually behind the J card where the scratches are, but yeah, I'll leave it like this for now because I've put it in here quite tightly and goodness knows how long it'll take for me to get it out again. But nevertheless, a riveting and brutal watch, and one that I quite enjoy revisiting every few years. And then we have a couple third window releases. If I can again play some Jenga. And all from both from their recent Arrow sale on the website. First one here is, of course, the Typhoon Club, which I've had my eye on for a while now and just decided to grab while I can still get it with this lovely slipcover. This comes from a small line of just 6 releases from Third Window called the Director's Company Edition. I've seen a few Japanese school dramas, but this really wasn't what I was expecting at all. It's actually much darker in tone, but kind of weaved with the exuberance of youth, if that makes sense. I think in some ways it's a film about flirting with disaster, but also about just sort of the madness of puberty in our teenage years. I'm not sure whether I might talk about this one a bit more in my Best of the Month video, as it's one that I couldn't quite pin down, but has certainly left an impression on me. And then we have River. Every time I'm doing the Jenga. This is from the same team that brought us Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes, which was another time travel film that I thoroughly enjoyed. And here again we have another time looping film, also based around the 2-minute time frame. Like their other one, this is pretty great. This one is a lot of fun, and with a little bit of depth to it as well. But with plenty of humour and craziness, and it's just got a lot going to keep you interested. Yeah, I really thoroughly enjoyed this one. And then we are into some Criterions. Start with the first one here, which is High Sierra. I watched this one on streaming, I think a few months ago now, actually with my parents when I was back home visiting, and yeah, really liked it. Bogey, of course, gives a great performance, as does Ida Lupino. And I think actually this might have been the first film that I saw her in. It didn't really make a huge impression on me immediately, but to be honest, it's grown in my estimations as I found myself thinking about it quite a lot afterwards. And so when Zavvi had a recent sale on some US imports, I had to grab this one. And next we have Lost Highway. As I mentioned earlier, I'm working towards owning all of David Lynch's films, and so I've been keen to see this one for a while. When I was wanting to get it, for some reason, it looked out of print on all the UK stores. I couldn't really find it anywhere except on eBay, going for much more than it was worth. So I thought maybe it had gone from our shelves, and I actually ended up importing the 4K here. But to be honest, it looks like it's come back now. I'm not really sure why. It seems to be readily available again. And so definitely a lesson in patience, as to be honest, I would have been happy with a Blu-ray of this one, as it's just a first time watch for me. But I can't wait to see it, and there's plenty of memes about it, so I'm pretty excited to see where they originate. And then we have the absolute classic and one of my favourites, which is Trainspotting. This is the 4K edition from Criterion, which has this just awful packaging, as their Blu-ray just comes in a normal looking case, which I would have much preferred. This one does glow in the dark though, if that interests you, but yeah, overall this is just terrible packaging. Why Criterion insists on continuing with their sort of strange and, let's face it, incredibly cheap packaging designs, this is just cardboard. It's just a cardboard envelope. It's just beyond me. Anyway, enough negativity, because this film is superb and I'm overjoyed to have it in 4K. I think this is probably Danny Boyle's best, in my opinion, launching the careers of the likes of Ewan McGregor and Kelly MacDonald with incredible performances all round. Johnny Lee Miller, Robert Carlyle, Ewan Bremner. This one is just a pretty brutal watch that will tug on your heartstrings and turn your stomach. But it has plenty of hilarious dark humour to keep you going. This one is all about drug addicts in Edinburgh. Again, I think a lesson in patience, because I felt like I simply had to get this one. I didn't even own it on Blu-ray, and it didn't seem like we were getting a release of it in the UK. But lo and behold, we now have a Steelbook 4K release on the horizon, which I think I actually would have much preferred, so live and learn. And then lastly for the Criterions, we have the absolutely incredible The Sound of Metal. I caught this one when it was released a few years ago, and it just blew me away. An absolute tour de force performance from Riz Ahmed, with great supporting performances from the likes of Olivia Cook, Paul Raci, and even Matteo Almaric. This one is all about a drummer in a metal band that begins to lose his hearing. His life, his identity, his relationship even, is all kind of wrapped up in his music and his ability to hear. And it's such a crushing blow that he has to endure. and it's all kind of about his journey through dealing with hearing loss. This one won 2 Academy Awards for Best Editing and Best Sound, but it was also up for Best Picture, Actor, Supporting Director and Screenplay, so that will tell you how amazing this film is. I cannot wait to watch it again and see if it has the same impact the second time around. And then we're into a few 88 Films releases, and these are actually my first Kung Fu pickups from them. First up here is The Long Arm of the Law 1 and 2. Now, I'd never heard of these films before, but I remember watching Chris Mohan's video back at the beginning of the year where he was talking about his favourite pickups of 2023. And right at the top of a bunch I remember was this one. And I've been really keen to see it ever since, so I'm delighted that I've finally managed to pick up this lovely edition of it as well. I kind of want to go into these more or less blind, as I've seen other people give them really high praise as well. So yeah, can't wait to see what these two have in store for me. Next is The Iceman Cometh. A film I've kind of bought because I've seen Maggie Cheung is in it, and we all know how amazing of an actor that she is. Also partially because It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia has kind of riffed their musical on the original The Iceman Cometh. And to be honest, this one just looked pretty intriguing. Kind of with a Highlander vibe to it, though to be honest I haven't seen that one either. But yeah, really keen to see what this has in store as well. And then we have the last of the Kung Fu films, which is the incredible Twin Dragons. A film that I vividly remember renting when I was a kid, at least twice, if not more. I remember I went through a bit of a phase of wanting to watch all the Jackie Chan films I could find, and I saw some absolute classics. And I remember we watched this one with the English dub at the time. And this is another film which stars Maggie Cheung and of course Jackie Chan, who plays 2 roles here. I think it must be about 20 years since I last saw this, so yeah, I cannot wait to check it out again. I can only really remember 1 or 2 scenes, so I think it'll be more or less like viewing it for the first time. Absolutely delighted to get the chance to revisit this one. Next, and we have a couple titles from Imprint. Now, Imprint are a label that I really like, but I barely have any releases from, just because they're so expensive to get. Usually they're about £30 each, but recently, again, Zavvi had that great import sale where things were about 50% off, so managed to get these 2 for about £25 each, which seemed like a pretty good deal to me. First up is The Parallax View, which is a film I've wanted to check out for ages now. And it's part of the Paranoia trilogy, which includes Clute with Donald Sutherland and All the President's Men with Dustin Hoffman and Robert Redford. And of course, The Parallax View here has Warren Beatty. All directed by Alan J. Bakula. Criterion also have a release of this one, but not in the UK, unfortunately, where this one actually doesn't have a Blu-ray release at all. And then we have Marooned, a film which came out just 1 year after 2001 A Space Odyssey. This one is directed by John Sturges and starring Gregory Peck, and interestingly was inspirational to Alfonso Cuarón's Gravity. This one is about 3 astronauts that get stranded in space who need to be rescued before they run out of oxygen, so sounds like absolutely fantastic watch. Then we have just one from Radiance Films, and this was a pre-order for me when I saw it was being released, and it's Mississippi Mermaid. Pretty much anything with Catherine Deneuve starring in it, I want to see. And add to that the legendary John Paul Belmondo, and all directed by Francois Truffaut, and surely you've got an absolute winner on your hands. I cannot wait to check this one out, as it has everything going for it. This one's about a wealthy plantation owner and a woman with a mysterious past. Sounds pretty intriguing. Next up, and I just wanted to quickly highlight that signalone are having a great sale at the moment where a lot of their titles are only £5 and it's free delivery to the UK, which is just an incredible deal. I've picked up just a few from them and I have 2 of those here. The Enforcer with Humphrey Bogart, which I've had my eye on for quite a while, and another that I've been wanting, which is a bit of a classic as I understand it, which is On the Beach, starring Gregory Peck, Ava Gardner, Fred Astaire and Anthony Perkins, which is a pretty stellar cast. That one's directed by Stanley Kramer. But yeah, £10 for these, pretty amazing. Then we have just one release from Curzon, which I think might have been my quickest pre-order ever. As soon as I heard about this one, I immediately put a pre-order in. Bong Joon-ho's Memories of Murder. My goodness, this is an absolute triumph of a film. One of the greatest ever made about a serial killer. It's incredibly dark, as you might of course expect, but it is riveting, with tension, suspense, and it just oozes utter brilliance in filmmaking and storytelling. My goodness, this one was incredible. I cannot wait to watch this again, and in 4K no less. The only negative was that I was really hoping for an Indicator or perhaps Arrow style special edition. The flimsy cardboard on this slip is incredibly cheap feeling, and it was no less expensive than the others. A bit of a letdown from Curzon, as in particular they've been doing so great with their box sets, so I was hoping for something that might be a bit similar. And lastly, that brings us on to a couple releases from Umbrella Entertainment out of Australia, of course. The first up here is Red Rock West, which I've been hearing quite a lot of good things about when Umbrella released their bigger special edition. Sadly, I did miss out on that edition, but I jumped on their slipcover release of it. This one, I believe, is a neo-noir with a western feel, with Nicolas Cage, Laura Flynn Boyle from Twin Peaks, no less, and Dennis Hopper. Pretty high hopes for this one. And then lastly, we have this absolute behemoth of a release for The Raid. I won't talk about it too much here because you can better believe I'll be waxing lyrical about this one in my Best Films I Saw in July video. This was just a superb rewatch for me, and I loved every single second of this action-packed, violent ballet of hand-to-hand combat and kicking ass. This was another extremely quick pre-order for me. I was so delighted when Umbrella announced they'd be releasing this because I'd been wanting a special edition of this film for a while, but the previous ones had just never really appealed to me. And so this one was an absolute joy to be able to get. It's an absolutely massive box and heavy too. The artwork is wonderful, I think, and suits the film perfectly, and this is just a superb release, even including a hardbound comic book inside. Just some absolutely stellar stuff from Umbrella Entertainment. And well, at long last, that brings us to the end of the video and my pickups over the last 2.5-ish months. There's still plenty for me to explore here and experience for the first time, and some incredible additions that I am delighted to have. Well, that is everything from me. If you stuck with me this far, thank you so much for watching, my fellow collector, and I'll see you in the next video.